if you give it like sort of 30 seconds and then start, because sometimes it can be a bit temperamental.
Yeah. If you just, Ruby, maybe want to pop a message in the chat when we're all...
When it's up. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I think we are live on Facebook. Hopefully that's all working, the wonders of technology. I don't know whether we want to get started straight away or maybe wait a minute. If someone on the sort of organising team could pop a message in, but obviously it's going to be recorded, so I guess people can always come back and watch the beginning if necessary, but I'm not sure which is best to do. Okay, awesome. We can get started right away. So hello to everyone watching on Facebook, wherever you might be. I guess some people might be in Exeter, but also some people all over the world, plenty of different time zones. So today, as part of the Wellbeing Week, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, we're kind of going to be focusing on finance. We're very lucky to be joined by Kath, and we will be talking about loan sharks. Obviously, this is a problem, or this is something, a phenomenon which has kind of always been present, I guess, at least recently, but with the pandemic has seen a sort of rise in that, and especially surrounding students' potential to get involved with that, there's been a rise. So that's the sort of aim of today's session, to get a bit more of an understanding around that. Kath, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe a bit more of your work?
Sure. So my name's Kath. I'm one of the operations managers with the England illegal money lending team, which makes it sound like we lend money illegally, but we don't. I prefer it. We know ourselves as Stop Loan Sharks, which is by far the better title. So basically, we're an enforcement team. We are about locking up loan sharks, stopping their illegal activity and taking away their shiny things through the proceeds of crime. But the team that I manage is the other side of the coin. So we're not investigators, we are the support side. So we do lots of victim support, lots of witness support, quite intensive work with people who've been to loan sharks to help them get back on track, and also lots of preventative work as well, trying to warn people about the dangers of loan sharks and promoting credit unions as the alternative, as a safe place to borrow money.
Fantastic. So we're definitely speaking to the right person then, to get a bit more of an insight about loan sharks in general, but also, you know, what we can do to sort of protect ourselves and maybe support others, or where people can go for support if they need it. I guess a good place to start would be, what is a loan shark?
It's a good question. So when I first started in this job, which is 12 years ago now, I had an image of kind of Phil Mitchell in my head. It was very much a kind of baseball bat wielding thug. And we occasionally do see that, but that's not a typical loan shark. So legally speaking, a loan shark is someone who lends you money without permission. So you want to lend money as a business, you've got to get permission from the Financial Conduct Authority. They'll check you're not a fraud, you haven't got convictions for bankruptcy, you haven't got any sorts of issues about you, which would mean you shouldn't be able to lend money legally, and they'll authorize you and give you this permission to lend money. That's the criminal act that a loan shark commits. They don't have that permission, but they do tend to behave in certain ways. So they won't give paperwork, most of them. Occasionally they do, to try and look legitimate, but the vast majority of loan sharks don't give paperwork. They might take security, which might be your passport, it might be your bank card, it might be something else that they take that just means that they've got control over you. And it's all about trying to work out what they own people, basically. So they work out what your weakness is, or what your pressure spot is, and then they'll push it. So we've had loan sharks where the threat's been about telling the partner about the debt, because your partner doesn't know you've borrowed this money, and that's going to cause you massive problems. We've had loan sharks where it's been about threatening children, and my kids go to school with your kids, and you wouldn't want my kids not being nice to your kids in the playground. We've had loan sharks where it's been about telling the boss, we work together, I've lent you money, you're not paying me back, I'm going to tell the boss you've got your hand in the till because I know that you owe me money. There's all sorts of subtle ways that they do it, but it's about gaining control over people's lives and threatening them. And it's also about extorting money. So loan sharks often quote double bubble. So you borrow £100, you pay back £200. But in reality, if you miss one payment, they'll double what you owe again. And they'll add on charges indiscriminately. We had one guy, he went on holiday. So someone missed a week's payment and he doubled what they owed because they hadn't paid that week because he got on holiday. So we've dealt with people who've borrowed literally £200, £300, £400 and paid back tens of thousands because the loan shark just keeps coming back for more. So it's very much about kind of under the radar lending, loan sharks. It's not authorised. It's not your payday lenders. It's not the ones that advertise on the telly. This is the man down the pub, the guy on Snapchat, the girl that you met at the union. It's people who purport to be your friend, purport to be helping you out, but actually are nasty and need to be avoided.
Yeah, I guess it's so, it can be so quick to get into those situations which you thought you had a hand on at the beginning, and then very quickly that money's gone to a level where it becomes extremely difficult to then pay it back. And yeah, that's interesting what you say about the Financial Conduct Authority. So I guess that's like the on paper definition is a loan shark is someone who is loaning money without authorization from the Financial Conduct Authority. But there are so many more things beyond that we can pick up on and look to kind of point out what might be a loan shark. So I guess then that's the next question, which you've already sort of answered, but how would you spot a loan shark? I guess obviously there are different organizations out there lending money. So you, as you mentioned, the sort of adverts that you see on TV, like the payday loans, which most people, I don't want to speak and give financial advice. I'm certainly not an authority to do that, but most people might say that would not be a wise decision to make for everyone, to take out a payday loan. But so what separates, I guess, that sort of loaning organization compared to a loan shark?
I think with any sort of legitimate loan, be it payday, high interest, whatever, they will give you paperwork. It will state what you've borrowed, what the terms are about paying it back, what happens if you miss a payment, and all importantly, the total cost of credit. So that's the thing we tell people to compare. If you're looking for a loan, compare the total cost of credit, because that's what you're going to pay basically for that loan. Loan sharks won't do that. It'll all be about, oh no, your car's knackered and you need £200 to get back on the road. I'll lend it, you pay it me back whenever, don't worry, I don't like to see a young girl suffering. It's that kind of thing. And then it's like, you come back the next week with the £200 and they're like, that's great, where's my interest? And that's the first time interest has been mentioned. And you're like, well, I didn't know anything about interest. I thought you'd lent me £200 and here it is back. No, you owe me another 50 quid. Well, I haven't got it. But by the time it's next week, then that 50's become 100. And they'll lend it to you again, but then they'll charge more interest on top of that, etc., etc. So it's the lack of paperwork and the lack of clarity about where you are up to with that loan payment. So if you rang a loan company who you had a legitimate loan with and you said, what do I owe you? They could look on their spreadsheet and say, today you owe £3,262.49. A loan shark will be like, you owe what I say you owe. So this week you owe me £250. Don't know what it'll be next week. I'll tell you next week. And it's that kind of unknown quantity that goes with illegal lending, which makes it very different from borrowing from someone who's authorised.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I guess following from that, then maybe a better but a more difficult distinction to make would be someone that's genuinely a friend, family member, someone that you know, someone, an extended acquaintance of some sort who is willing to loan you money and do so on good accord, and maybe there'll be a small bit of interest, but it's all reasonable and agreed. So how would you then try and distinguish between someone who's doing it with the right intent, although maybe with a small bit of interest, and someone who, I guess, a loan shark is kind of doing this very regularly to multiple different people? How it's difficult. How would you try and make that distinguishment?
That's the one that's tricky, I think. I think if it's family, isn't it? That's that's one thing. If it's a friend, I just think you've got to ask yourself, how good a friend are they? And even if it is a really good friend, I mean, I've lent friends money in the past, and what happens if they can't pay it back? What does that do to the friendship? It's a separate issue from illegal lending, but it's a tricky situation to get into, I think, from that sort of point of view. I think it's just about looking at it really pragmatically and thinking, is this too good to be true? Have I only known this person 2 weeks and now they're offering to lend me £200? That feels dodgy. Have I known them 17 years and I went to school with them and they've offered to lend me £200? Probably a bit different. And I think it's just that knowledge of that individual. And it is sometimes a really, really tricky situation to call. But I think if in doubt, don't would be my advice, for many reasons. Because I think there are other issues that come, like I say, with borrowing from friends than just illegal lending. But I think it is, if in doubt, don't. And it's a really personal kind of judgment call of someone that you've known a really decent amount of time, and personally, not a friend of a friend, because where loan sharks tend to be is in the friend of a friend zone, in that sphere. And they'll only come in and they'll only sort of become friendly with you when you need money.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's definitely a good sort of policy to go by. If you're unsure, then probably don't.
Yeah.
So let's say that you've made that judgment and you've made the wrong one. You thought that someone was loaning you money for the right reasons, or you were fully aware that you were dealing with a loan shark, but for whatever reasons, and there are many, you've gone down that route. What protections does the law offer, if any?
So a loan from a loan shark will probably not have to be paid back. We have to say probably. There is an outside chance a court could give something called a validation order, which would mean you would have to pay it back, but it's not happened in my 12 years working here. So in all likelihood, you won't have to pay that money back once the loan shark is arrested, and so on and so forth. But that necessitates somebody telling us about him or her. And that's the tricky bit. It's the kind of engaging with authority. So while you are out there in the world as a victim of a loan shark, you've got very little protection. Obviously, they can't assault you because that's breaking other legislation and so on. But you're not actually protected really until you come under our wing. So it's about people having the conversation with us. They can do so anonymously, they can do so in confidence, but it's about getting it reported so we can start looking at that individual. Because the thing with loan sharks is they don't go away. There'll always be a sum that they'll give you. If you pay me this much, then I'm gone. But actually what will happen is you'll scrabble together that much money, you'll get a legitimate loan, you go to your mate, you go to your mum and dad, and you'll get that mythical sum of money, hand it over, and next week they're back for more still. So that's the thing for our point of view. It's heartbreaking because people get into all sorts of legitimate debt and all sorts of trouble with family and friends to try and pay this individual off, when actually if they just reported him or her, then there may be an easier way out from that kind of point of view. But we get it's a difficult thing to do. People feel silly, they feel ashamed, they feel embarrassed, they're afraid. There's lots of reasons people don't report loan sharks, but I've been doing this job, like I say, 12 years, and we've never had something bad happen to someone who's reported a loan shark. Bad things happen when you don't report loan sharks, not when you do report loan sharks. That's our kind of standard line, and it's really, really true. People who haven't reported loan sharks, much higher risk of suicide attempts, of mental health issues, of legitimate financial issues alongside that. When people report to us, we support them the whole way. And like I say, my team, we're not investigators. We're all about hand-holding, holistic support, looking at what situation you're in and how we can get you back to where you would have been if Mr. or Mrs. Loan Shark had not come along.
Okay, that's interesting to hear. I wasn't fully aware of the legality surrounding this, so that's really interesting to hear. So if someone has got themselves into this situation and they get in touch with the organisation that you work with, which I'm sure the Guild is sharing somewhere on this live stream or can do afterwards, if they haven't. So let's say someone calls you up, emails you, I'm not sure of the way people get in contact. What would be the what's sort of the step-by-step process? What can they expect from, okay, I've done this thing, I'm embarrassed about it, I've got myself into this sort of tricky situation, but I'm going to take that step to ask for help and to see what can be done. What can they expect from that sort of from the beginning, I guess, throughout?
The big thing depends if they're anonymous, because if they're giving us information anonymous, obviously we can't go back to them. So we won't be able to let them know what's happening. We won't be able to sort of update them. We won't be able to support them in the same way. So that would probably be a one-off phone call where they were giving us information, and then we'd go away and see if we could corroborate that information via the police, via bank accounts, via whatever else. If someone is willing to sort of talk to us on the record, it doesn't have to be formally, but to give us their names, give us a contact details and so on, they'd get assigned what's called a liaison officer, which is one of my team who would then help them the whole way through. So we'd meet with them, we'd look at their situation, we'd look at their housing situation, are they in rent arrears because they've been paying the loan shark? Is there a risk of eviction anywhere along the line? We'd look at the mental health issues about, any other issues around work or life or university or whatever else we could help with. And we try and put in place a plan together for making that situation better. At the same time as that, an investigation could be going on in the background of people, like I say, looking at people's bank accounts, talking to the police, looking at what other information's out there on social media. And what we're trying to do is build enough information to get a warrant to go and search the property of the loan shark, to look for further records, be it on their phone, computer, paper records occasionally, or a memory stick or whatever else. And from that point, then the investigation kicks in. But we don't need to tell the loan shark who's told us that they've lent them money at that stage. It's very, very unlikely the loan shark would ever know who it is that made the initial phone call against them, because we wouldn't take a case forward with just one victim. We'd need more than one to make a case anyway. But that individual still is supported, whether or not the case goes anywhere. That individual is supported regardless.
Okay, that's very interesting and important to note that the individual that reported it would never be told, and presumably most loan sharks are, you know, with many different individuals, so the likelihood of them finding out who it was is low, which is reassuring, I think. Yeah, that's
most of them plead guilty as well. So in the last 3 years, we haven't had a single case go to court, because, you know, it's a technical offence, and a lot of the time we get them on the banking records, because they'll be receiving money through the bank accounts and paying it out through the bank accounts. And a solicitor will look at it and say, if you plead guilty, you get a reduced sentence. So they'll basically look at it and say they've got you, so you may as well plead and take the reduced sentence. So we've not actually had anyone had to go up against a loan shark for at least 3 years. Okay.
Yeah, that's very promising. And if you were to go into court, it would an individual then their sort of identity be released? No, still
it would be released at that point. Yeah.
Okay.
But at that point, you'd have given a formal statement, and that would be made very clear to you at the point at which you do that. So basically, there's a line that you cross at which you become a witness. And if you cross the line to become a witness, that information can then be disclosed and so on. But people don't have to make that decision. We'll support them. We can take information. There's stuff we can do without them becoming a witness. And it's up to the individual. Some people choose to do it, some people don't. That's absolutely fine with us either way.
Okay. Yeah, that's really good and important, that, you know, your identity can remain anonymous, so like therefore your safety and your family's safety, if that's something which you're concerned about, which presumably you would legitimately be concerned about, that's protected through that anonymity, which is very good to hear. So kind of taking the conversation more towards students, which presumably will be the majority of people that are watching. So for students who are in financial need, now we've seen, I think, reports and even sort of just anecdotally, you know, students are in more financial need now than they have been in the past due to the pandemic, as are many other groups in society, and are therefore more sort of targeted by loan sharks potentially. But what are the alternatives for students who are facing financial hardship, needing to borrow money, maybe on a short term, maybe for rent, but the student loan hasn't come in, something like that? Yeah, what are the alternatives where they can turn to?
So I think it's about having a conversation with people. So if it is for rent, then have a conversation with the landlord. It might be the landlord, you know, gets it and sees that at the moment things are tough, things are different. And, you know, you can say, look, here's the email that says it's coming through in 2 weeks. And they'll be like, yeah, that's fine. You know, I think having the conversation, not burying your head in the sand, that's the big thing first and foremost. And then if there is a real need to borrow money, I think, you know, family is always ideal from that perspective, if that's an option for people. We promote credit unions as well, who are community banks. So there's one in most towns and cities in England. And the amount they charge by interest is capped, and they will lend the smaller amounts of money, the £200, £300, 400 that the banks wouldn't be interested in. And they treat you as an individual as well. It's much more of a me making the decision about the loan than my computer making the decision about the loan. So it's a relationship, and they encourage savings at the same time. They'll look at they won't lend it to you if it's not affordable, but it's definitely a good option for people in terms of short-term borrowing, because of that capped APR as well. But I think as well as get the advice, talk to your students' union, talk to your advice centres, and don't borrow to get out of debt. There's nothing worse that you can do than borrowing money to get out of debt. You're much better dealing with your existing creditors and dealing with people. And things like Step Change will do you a free debt management plan, never pay for a debt management plan, where they will work with your creditors and they will agree affordable repayments with them and things like that. So there is help out there, but it is just about putting your head above the parapet and asking for it. And no one's judgmental. You know, I've been working this field for 12 years. Nothing's going to shock me now. I've heard it all, literally. And there is no one. The people I judge are the loan sharks. I don't judge anybody else that we have contact with. And my team are all the same. And you'll find that with all professionals who work in debt, they've seen it before. They're not going to be surprised. And it's just, they get that it's difficult to ask for help, but it is about just putting your head above the parapet.
Yeah, that's great. I think, it's having that conversation, although it's very difficult in so many different areas of life where we're faced with challenges. Making that first step to talk to someone can be the most difficult, but going to be really grateful that you've done that afterwards. And we've kind of touched on this, but also just by virtue of the fact that you've been working in this sort of area for, I think you said 12 years, loan sharks obviously haven't just become a problem during the pandemic. We can be sure of that. But I guess, have you seen a rise or maybe a change in the way they operate since sort of the various lockdowns and things that we've been in?
I think we don't know about a rise yet. It takes someone on average of 2 years to contact us. So any borrowing that's happened in the last 12 months, we're not going to know about yet, unfortunately. In terms of their sort of the way they operate, we've seen more using bank transfer because they can't collect in person at the school gates or at the pub or whatever else. So we've seen more bank transfer, and we've seen more loan sharks targeting people on social media. So we've got a case actually going through the courts this year, which was targeted students at university, and they actually paid an influencer to recommend them for loans, allegedly at this stage, she has to say, allegedly. Don't get sued. And that's entirely new for us. We've never had that happen before. We've seen loan sharks advertising on Facebook community groups. We've seen them meeting people on dating sites, things like Tinder and so on. And you think you're chatting to somebody and you just bitch that you're short of cash and you're sick of it. And all of a sudden, oh, my mate lends people money, I'm sure I can introduce you. And then you're in a whole heap of pain there as well. So I think that the way that they operate, like you say, they're not new. They were operating online before the pandemic as well, but there's probably been an upsurge in online illegal lending during the pandemic, and definitely an increase in bank transfer rather than kind of cash payments.
Okay, that's interesting. And is just out of interest, would the bank transfer, is that sort of useful, I guess, in terms of when it comes to reporting? Yeah. Is that a good thing that they're now sort of in some sort of ledger, some sort of record?
It helps us, definitely. We've got financial investigators as part of the investigation team. One of the things they can do is access, as long as we've got enough evidence, we can't just ask for your bank details, but if we've got some evidence against you, we can ask for your bank details. And, you know, some of them, if they've got 30 people all making a repayment once a week with loan as the reference, then that would give any suggestion that this is an illegal lender.
Yeah, that's really interesting, I guess. Small silver lining.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take what we can get.
Yeah. We've kind of gone over what help is available for those currently affected by loan sharks, you know, reaching out, but I guess maybe just running through a few support services again, either people who are needing the support because they've got into that difficult situation with a loan shark, or maybe just before, you might not be a student, or you might not be willing to go to the student services for that financial support. What can we do to help people from not getting into that situation?
So from our point of view, we're Stop Loan Sharks. Our website, stoploansharks.co.uk. We've got live chat on there, which is anonymous, and that's Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We've also got a 24-hour hotline, which is 0300 555 2222. So that's manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We answer it at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that's the way kind of to get hold of us. On the website as well, there's lots of information, survivor stories, information on what a loan shark is, hints and tips if you're worried about someone else, if you're worried a mate might have borrowed from a loan shark, or anything like that. In terms of debt advice, we work with Citizens Advice, but also Step Change, who are very good and online and have a good phone line presence as well. And they will look at things like debt management plans with people. And in terms of kind of borrowing and things like that, it'd be credit unions. Look for your local credit union. There's a website called findyourcreditunion.co.uk, I think. And that's a very good way of putting in your postcode. You could borrow money. They've all got what's called a common bond, so they lend in one particular area. But it's where you live or work normally. So I'm guessing for students as well, you could join the credit union in the place where your university is, as well as in your hometown, if you chose to do so.
It's good to know that there are a plethora of really fantastic resources, and having something that's just 24/7, because I imagine from just watching the news and some reports of these, loan sharks will tend to try and scare people when they're vulnerable, which is obviously, you know, generally for a lot of people later at night, especially maybe if you're female or vulnerable for any other reasons. So yeah, that's really fantastic that that's 24/7 and people are able to pick up the phone and speak to someone and get that support whenever they need it. I'm sure that the team will be able to sort of pull those resources together that you just mentioned and make sure that everyone can see those after the talk as well. I think at some point we're going to go to questions from the audience, so if anyone who's watching on Facebook has questions, then please do drop them into the chat and we'll make sure to ask Kath. something which I have seen a rise of, not just during the pandemic, but I probably over the last year, 2 years. I mean, time has kind of become a very odd thing, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess over the last year, I'd say this sort of buy now, pay later. And I'm not sure if that's something that I'm guessing you're familiar with, but I'm not sure if it's something you work on. But could you sort of maybe touch on what that is and the sort of issues surrounding that? I know a little bit about it myself, but
yeah, I don't know a huge amount apart from as a a consumer kind of thing, but it's one of those, it seems to be popping up everywhere. So you could always buy stuff, pay later, cars, sofas is the classic one, isn't it? It's always been an option for people on credit, and if it's less than a certain number of payments, I think 3, but don't quote me, then you don't actually have to be authorized as a lender, and you don't have to follow the same guidelines, the same sort of cooling off periods and stuff like that. So I think what is popping up at the moment is that option being put onto all sorts of stuff. I mean, I've been offered it on stuff that's kind of £15, and you think, no, I can buy it at £15, and if I can't buy it at £15, I wouldn't buy it, but pay later. And I think it's a dangerous thing to do, because everyone thinks they're going to have more money in the future. Everyone thinks, come payday, it's been a bad month this month. Come payday, I'll be flush. Come payday, I'll be whatever. If one day my ship will come in, I will win the lottery or whatever else. And it's an easy thing to do. But actually, if you can't afford it today, don't buy it, would be my advice. I just think it's dangerous grounds, and it's a slippery slope down the road into all sorts of debt issues from buy now, pay later. Don't get me wrong, it's a good way of buying certain goods. Again, sofas, cars being 1-2 options. But for the everyday, I think, if you can afford to pay cash, because you're always going to get a better deal that way. And then it's gone, and it's dealt with, and it's done. And it's not something that you can forget about and suddenly think, oh no, that's coming in my bank account tomorrow and I haven't got the money.
Yeah, I think it's the way that these, I don't even really know what to call them, these companies that have are marketing themselves is really really damaging. They like, I did some research into this for something that I was writing, I think in about May of last year. And they really do market themselves as your friend. And, why wouldn't you want to pay for this pair of like £40 shoes over 4 weeks, only 10 quid or whatever it is. And there is very, very little mention of any of the difficulties that you can get yourself into with that. And this sort of idea that, oh, if we make the branding pink and we're your friend, and we use all these kind words, and we never mention the word debt, we never mention any sort of financial terms, then it just catches all these young impressionable people who are trying to keep up with the trends, and want the latest pair of shoes, want the latest whatever it is, from clothing to sort of tech stuff, and it's put there right next to, you've got Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, Klarna, or whatever the other companies are. But it really is so different to any of those things, and I just think there needs to be a hold on it. And I know that at least in the May of last year, these companies were not, the FCA didn't want to have anything to do with them, and said that they did not require any regulation surrounding them. But that's a whole nother area which just baffles me quite a lot. But yeah, as you said, if you can't pay for something now, don't presume that in a month's time or in however long's time that you're suddenly going to be in a completely different financial situation. That being said, there obviously is times where these things can be useful, but just be aware of them. So a question that's come in from the audience is, what kind of age groups do you find are most affected by loan sharks?
It can literally be anyone. So I think the youngest victim we ever had was 14. And the oldest one's been in their 80s, definitely. And the same is true of the loan sharks. We've had loan sharks who've been, 18, 19. We've had loan sharks who've been 78, 79, 80. It can literally be anyone. And it varies from year to year, but it depends what cases we're bringing, I think, as well. And it depends, what advertising we're doing as well. So I think last year, the biggest category was 40 to 50-year-olds. Having said that, there was a fairly even spread across the whole age range. So it could literally be anybody who's borrowing from a loan shark, or is the loan shark as well.
Yeah, I think that's important as well, to recognise that a loan shark can be of any age. Just because they're slightly older doesn't necessarily mean they're more trustworthy or legitimate. So something which I was wondering was, if you have a friend or a family member or someone who you know who's you think, or you're certain that they've got themselves into a situation with a loan shark, and that they're in a difficult situation and they're not sure what to do, but they're very adamant that reporting it is not going to be the right thing to do, whether they are worried about their safety or any other reasons why they might be worried about reporting it. What would you say to someone who's in that situation, who's like the supporter, or wants to be supportive to that individual that they know, to either try and convince them that reporting will be the right thing to do, or any other kind of way that they can support that individual?
I think it is really tricky. But the thing I would say first and foremost is don't give them money to give to the loan shark, because it can feel like the right thing to do. I remember dealing with a lady on our hotline, and she'd remortgaged a house to pay off her son's loan shark. She'd put $7,000 on the mortgage of the house, and she was going to pay it. And then I said to her, he'll be back for more. And she wouldn't have it at all. And she's like, well, if he is, then I'll ring you back and then I'll report him. But he said, we borrowed 10, he's going to pay back 14. And then that's what we've agreed. And he's paid back 7. So he just needs this 7. So I've remortgaged and I've got the $7,000. And she was actually ringing up to check she wasn't breaking the law by paying it. Bless her. But, and lo and behold, a month later, she rang back and she said, you were right, he's back for more. But by that point, that $7,000's gone and it's on a mortgage and she's got to pay it off. So that's the biggie. I think don't give them money. We've just got a new page on our website about if you are in that exact situation. What we tend to find works with victims when we're working with them and they're a bit reluctant. We've got a load of survivor stories on YouTube, all different sort of genders, ages, accents from across the country. And I think they're really good because I can sit here and say, oh, the people that I work with, the only thing they ever wish is that they'd reported it sooner, which is true. But also I'd say it if it wasn't true, you'd kind of assume as well. So I think it is one of those things that, use a survivor story, because that's a victim, that's a real person, and it's them saying you need to ask for help, and then sort of endorsing us and saying, this team has been supportive, you can walk away at any time, it's anonymous if you want it to be, and so on. And I think it's just trying to persuade someone to take that first step. And even if the first step is go on live chat and have a chat. At any point you can hang up and walk away. We have no idea who you are. We get a visitor number, which is a randomized 8-digit number, and that's all we get. So, literally that's it. So I think it's just trying to get them to take baby steps as much as anything else. But yeah, survivor stories on our website on YouTube, that's a good way of doing it as well.
Yeah, that's really good. I think, as you say, obviously I think everything that you're saying is very legitimate and coming from the best place possible. You want to help people, but at the same time, hearing from someone who's been in that situation and has come out the other side better from the work that you and your colleagues do is going to help someone maybe realize that they need to take that step in getting some help. On that, are there sort of any support groups or networks for people who are finding themselves in this situation, or maybe recovering from what I imagine can be somewhat traumatizing, going through the whole process of sorting it out? Or would it just be to kind of get in touch with you and speak to one of your colleagues on the lines?
Excuse me, it would just be to get in touch with us, really, I think, as much as possible. But having said that, we have organised counselling for people in the past through things like victim support and so on, that that is a service that is available, because it can be incredibly traumatic, and people can have PTSD, make no two bones about it. But I think the initial support's us, because we're the experts, and like I said, there's nothing we won't have seen before, so that people aren't going to shock us, and it is just about saying help and letting us see what we can do for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's always good advice. Get in touch with the professionals who know what they're doing. Have you seen sort of over the pandemic, or more just sort of in recent years, I guess, with the rise of things like social media? Obviously, social media has been around for quite a while, but it's becoming more and more prevalent. Have you seen any sort of new dangers and financial scams sort of rise out of the pandemic, or any other things which have been more prevalent recently, that you think people are less aware of, or want to sort of warn people of the dangers of?
I think there's probably been the spike in romance scams. Certainly, talking to police colleagues, it's not something that we would look at, But, you know, the kind of standard one being, you know, you meet someone online, you chat to them, you get on really, really well, but they desperately need £200 to be able to come and visit you because they're stuck in Spain in a pandemic and they need to be able to get back across here to be able to come and meet you. Those sorts of things I think have been increasing. And obviously anything that's linked to COVID, which is completely sick, the idea that, you know, people would say, yeah, you can pay for a vaccine here. And those sorts of scams is just like, just come away, step away from it, go back in to the NHS website and get the correct information. I think as soon as there is anything, then scammers will jump on it. You know, whatever they can look at, whatever they can attach themselves to, there's money to be made, and people are scared and people are fed up of being stuck in, and people would like a vaccine so they can go out again and things. So, you know, there's lots of emotions there to be played upon, and scammers aren't afraid to do so.
Yeah, it's very, hearing the stories of the sort of vaccines is upsetting, but very real, and it needs to be, even though it's upsetting, it needs to be spoken about, so that people are aware of it, and they are approaching sort of older people, at least in the stories that I've read. So yeah, people need to be aware of that and share that information. I'm just wondering, is there any more questions that have come through on the live stream? I can't see it, but I believe these two organisers are on there. So I'll just give them a second to pop anything in chat. So I don't think any more questions have come through at the moment. Is there anything else that you think I haven't touched on, or you haven't had the opportunity to speak about, which you think is sort of important to bring up?
Not that I can think of. Again, you know, we've got live chat on our website 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, stoploansharks.co.uk, and the hotline 0300 555 2222, 24 hours, 7 days a week.
I think I've personally learned a tremendous amount by talking to you, and I'm sure that the other people watching, and also people who will probably come back to watch this at a later time, will have learned so much. And I think it's a scary, difficult situation for anyone that's in it, but I think what is promising and what is hopeful is that there is help out there, and there are people like yourself and other people who really can help you sort things out and hold your hand along the way. You're not going to be alone in that situation. So if you are either in trouble with loan shark right now, you know, reach out, ask for help. And if you're considering it, think about the other support services that are available for you, and think about looking somewhere else to get that financial support. I think we're probably ready to come off the live, but thank you so much, Kath, for
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
and thank you to everyone on the live stream who's been watching.